Hey everybody, it's Dina Rico with the Creativity Cave, and I'm so excited to be with you today because we're going to watercolor, and you know that's my favorite. I'm sure this comes as no surprise to you, but watercoloring is just the best. It is so fun and relaxing, and I can't wait to share with you 5, and maybe if we get really serious, 6 ways to do a watercolor wash background. And then we're going to make one of them into a card. So I'm going to start with some Fluid 100 watercolor paper. This is the most important part of the whole process. Make sure you're using watercolor specific paper. If you use regular cardstock, it will be a disaster. Regular cardstock cannot handle the water in this particular technique, and it will literally either pill or fall apart or look terrible, or all of those things. So make sure you're using watercolor paper. I like the Fluid 100 watercolor paper that comes from our Stampin' Up! Catalog because it is 100% cotton paper, which is a nice high quality paper, and it can definitely handle all the water that we're going to literally throw at it in this video. So I'm going to start with a little color combination I've got here, and you can use any colors that you'd like. I recommend colors that are analogous or near one another on the color wheel. So like blues and greens, pinks and purples, reds and pinks, or pinks and oranges. Any of those combinations are great. Okay, so they are just going to come, and actually let me show you what I mean by that. Because I happen to have a color wheel, a Stampin' Up! Color wheel. So colors that are near one another on the color wheel. You don't want colors that are opposite from one another on the color wheel, because that will create like a muddy, ugly neutral color, like browns and grays. We want nice bright colors. So whenever you're near one another on the color wheel, you're good to go. Okay, so I've got Lost Lagoon, Pretty Peacock, and Old Olive. These are pretty analogous type colors. And I'm going to start with my water painter. Now, I have water in here, but I actually have some water in a jar right here because this technique is going to use a lot of water, and you will go through like several barrelfuls of this if you don't. So I'm going to start with some water. Now, actually, let me take a step back. I'm actually not going to start with water. I'm going to show you one more. This is why I said maybe 6. I'm going to show you one more technique for a wash, and this is a wet on dry. So I'm going to start with dry paper, and you can use either side of this. Obviously, my ink is going to be wet. Now, you can squeeze your ink pad lids to the lid like that, and you can pick up color in the lid that way. Or because I'm going to do so many different techniques, I'm actually going to use my re-inkers, and I just have these on a block here. So I've got some Lost Lagoon, some Pretty Peacock, and some Old Olive. And my Lost Lagoon and my Pretty Peacock are kind of blending, so we'll see how that goes. Okay, so a wet on dry means I'm going to pick up some of this color with water on my brush, and then my paper is dry, and you can see we're getting a nice coloring on our paper. Okay, then I'm going to kind of continue with some Pretty Peacock. Got to get some more water on my brush, and we'll kind of keep going. And you can see they don't really blend. There's not really a nice smooth transition. It's just one color and then the next color. A little feathering, but that's it. And then again, I will continue with my third color, which is Old Olive. Okay, so the colors are nice, but not, kind of streaky. Like there's definitely lines between them. Now, the one nice thing about this paper is that it doesn't help make the transitions of your brush strokes nice and smooth. So you can see there's not like lines of my brush strokes so much, but there's definitely lines between the colors. Okay, so this is a wet on dry. And I will put pictures of all these on my blog so you can see them. Next, what we're going to do is wet on wet. So I'm going to start with clean water, and I'm going to, my brush is a little bit dirty, but that's okay. It's You probably can't even see it in the video, but there is just a teeny tinge of that olive in here. Okay, so now I've got my full paper is completely wet. So by the way, if you're doing this on a surface you want to protect, you want to put something down like some cardstock or paper towel or something to protect your work surface. I'll just wipe mine up. Okay, so now I've got water over the whole thing and it's pretty wet. It's not like dripping, but it's definitely shiny. And I'm going to do the same thing. And this time you're going to see how the water helps the colors spread and blend. Okay. So that's Lost Lagoon. Let's do Pretty Peacock. My Pretty Peacock and Lost Lagoon are mixing a little bit on my block, so they're kind of starting to come into one color. But now look at that. You just kind of transition from one color to the next. And of course, my brush is helping the process. And you can come back and smooth over the color transitions if you want. Okay, but they're definitely going from lighter to darker. And now we're going to switch up and move to our Old Olive. So I'll put that on there. And I like kind of putting the color down and then coming back and blending a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to rinse my brush just to get some of that olive off. And then I'm going to kind of go over the area between the two colors. Now, sometimes you get too much paint, or in this case, re-inker on your brush. So it's a great idea to have either a towel or a paper towel handy so that you can dab off the excess ink. Okay, and then I'm going to go in here and just add a little more. And there we go. Look at that nice smooth transition. And by comparison, here's the other one. By the way, the nice thing is this one's just about dry. This one so is not. One other thing is you can see this is a little bit of a rough looking area. It's not smooth color like it is over here. When you put color directly onto paper that is this re-inker, dye-based ink re-inker, it often stains your paper. When you put it down with water like this, it doesn't stain it so much as just adds the color. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but it is definitely a difference. Okay, so those are the two here. Also, I did go all the way to the edges on this paper and I did not on this one. So don't, that is a little bit of a difference too. But not so much in technique as just how I applied the color. Okay, now let's do something really exciting. We're going to take another piece and we're going to wipe up the mess we've created and we're going to put back the break between our two colors on here. And I want to do another, I want to add color, but instead of doing like a gradient like we've done thus far, I want to add color kind of a little bit more randomly. Okay. So I am going to do a couple of bold techniques and then I'm going to do a couple of softer techniques. Okay. So I'm going to start with a bold technique. And for this, I'm going to once again color my paper with, or cover, I should say, my paper with water. And the reason is because it really just allows the color to really move and blend and kind of do its thing. If it's dry, you have definitely more control about where the color goes, but less kind of fun and experimental surprises that come along the way. Now, I know there's type A's out there that don't like when things are out of control, but believe me, this is fun and exciting to see what happens. Okay, so I've got water all over my paper. Again, it's not drippy, but it's definitely shiny wet. Okay, and depending on, and now I'm just going to take my ink and just kind of dab it randomly on here. And look at how it spreads out because of the water. Oh, so fun. I'm going to add my second color, which is the darker color. So much fun. Now, I definitely am leaving areas because I have yet another color. I'm going to rinse my brush because we're changing from that Pretty Peacock into Old Olive. And now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to just dab my Old Olive all over. She's nice and bright. And how fun is that? Okay. So that is a definite type of wash, a watercolor wash with just dabbing our colors. Now, at this point, you can do a couple of different things. If I wanted to, I could sprinkle some salt. I love using kosher salt. Coarse kosher salt from Morton's is the best for the results that you might want. Okay. And you got to do that while this is still totally wet like this. And in fact, if you need to, you can even add some color to this. Or I'm sorry, water. We already added plenty of color. But like some of the areas are starting to dry out a little bit. So I can literally come back in and add the color. Or water. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. So you want it to be really wet. And if it's starting to dry, add some water on top of the color you've already added. Okay, so again, you want it as wet as when you started. And then you can take and sprinkle some of that salt on here. Okay, I'm also going to try and take a picture just so I can show you what this looked like before I did this step. I think I've got the picture now. All right, so are you ready? Because it's so cool. Okay, I'm just sprinkling some salt on here. And what happens is the salt is going to absorb the water, and the pigment in the ink is going to get absorbed in some places as well. Okay, now I did one very similar to that already, and this is what it looks like. It is about dry. So let me move this aside so I can show you what it looks like and what to do next. Again, cleaning off my surface here. Okay, so I've got this on here, and I'm going to take a bone folder. And you want this to be dry. This is almost dry. It's not 100% dry. But I'm going to take my bone folder and scrape all the salt off. If you're using similar colors, you can literally reuse the salt if you want. But since salt is not exactly an endangered resource, I'm just going to toss mine away. But look at how cool that background is. And it started just like the one I just did. I did the blotches of color all over. And then the salt really affects the look of the background. And how cool is that? Oh my gosh, I love it. Okay, but wait, there's more. All right, my next one, we're going to do very much in the same manner as what we just did. So we'll start with water. I hope you will try these because they're so fun. And by the way, you don't have to use a whole piece of Fluid 100 paper to do this. You can cut this down. Like I would cut these in half and try each of these on a half a sheet, but it's just for the video that I'm doing a whole sheet. Woo! Okay, so I've got everything on here, nice and wet. We're good. We're going to dab that color on just like we did before. Notice that I'm leaving space between each color so that each color can be seen on its own. We'll rinse between the peacock and the olive because those are different colors, of course, you know, very different colors. Might need some more peacock here, or I'm sorry, olive. I was looking at the olive, but it said peacock. Okay. So then I'm just sticking these out. Oh, so cool. Okay. Want a little more color. Want to make sure the intensity of each kind of matches in this case, but you don't have to. I mean, you can do whatever you want. This is your watercoloring painting. You can make it however you want it to. Okay, I'm going to add just this one isn't as crucial that you have as everything super wet, but okay, I've got plenty of stuff on here. Okay, so again, we've got another cool background. Ooh, maybe I'll take another picture. Okay, I think I got it. All right, now this time I'm going to take some rubbing alcohol. I have 91%. The higher the concentration, the cooler, or more distinct the results are, I should say. And if you have a water painter that's, let's just say, not great, look at the brush is kind of curved on this one. It got smooshed. So this is perfect for something that doesn't require a perfect brush. Okay, I dipped it in my watercolor. Are you ready? Or in my rubbing alcohol. And I'm just going to tap it on here. Okay, it might be too wet. Oh, there we go. So I'm tapping it on and you get these cool little water droplets. And it's almost, for stampers, it's almost like a resist technique. Now you can see on the areas where it's drier, it's not quite as visible, but I'm kind of just dabbing this all over to get all kinds of water droplets. Now this technique is so much fun for like a sea life type background that you might make, or just a general fun background. Okay, now when it dries, it's going to look something like this. Notice how things definitely get lighter when they dry, just so you're aware. So if you want more color, add it before it dries. You can layer these up, by the way, so it's kind of fun to play with that. So that is what that looks like dry. And now now these were the bold kind of techniques. I'm going to give you a couple of a little bit more subtle ones. And they're basically the same thing, but kind of in reverse of one another. Okay. So I'm running out of places to put these. So this next one, we're going to start with a wash of watercolor, or water. Okay. And we're just going to make our gradient, kind of like what we did in the second version, where we did wet on wet gradient. And it's not critical, you know, how this comes out. We just want to get some color down. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this start to dry. Like, I don't want it to be totally dry. I just want it to start to dry so that it's not sopping wet like it kind of is right now. Again, this is not drippy, it's just wet. Okay, you can also see that I went with a slightly less bolder color approach, so it wasn't crazy bright or intensely colored as we have done before. Okay, so that's the one. We're going to do the second one while we wait for this one to get a little bit dried out. Just a little. Not super dried out. In the meantime, I'm adding just a little bit more re-inker because we're kind of going through it. Okay, so I'm rinsing out my brush. Now you can do this either with or without water to start with. I personally like it with water because I think you get more exciting results. But if you want real smooth droplets, then don't put the water down first. And I guess I could show you that. Maybe we're going to end up with like 7 techniques. Okay, so I've got my water on here. Now I'm going to take my medium point brush. I want it wet with water, so I dipped it into my water. Now I'm going to dip it into my re-inker, and I'm going to tap it against my finger. And look at those fun little droplets. Okay, so that looks pretty cool. I'm going to pick up my next color, which is Pretty Peacock, and I will get even brighter droplets. And you can do as many or as few as you want. And then finally, Old Olive. And again, this is such a fun technique. Try it with different colors. Here you could go a little bit bolder or outside the analogous color scheme, but there you go. Now these colors will kind of diffuse into one another a little bit more as it dries. And so you get something that looks kind of like this. So fun. Now, if you want to start with dry paper, let's just check on this. And we'll let it dry just a teeny bit longer. It's kind of a feeling, by the way, for how dry you want something. Okay, so I'm not going to start with water. We're going to go basically wet onto dry, and then you can see in this case, you get very round, darker dots. And as I use up the re-inker on my brush, the dots get lighter. I think I might have just spit on this one too, but don't tell anyone. You'll never know. It's droplets. All right, I'll repeat that with my next darker color. And again, I'm going to get more droplets. And as I run out of water, I get more or as I run out of ink, I get more watery droplets. And finally, we'll do this with Old Olive. Okay, now on here, you're not going to see the difference of color as nearly as much as on the other one because they're all real small speckles. But again, it creates a really fun design. And this is like spritzing with markers, but when you do it with watercolors, it's easier and it doesn't ruin your marker tips. Okay, now let's come back to this one. It's still a little wet, but not like shiny wet. Okay, and you want to do this next step with plain water. I know my brush looks a little bit dirty, but it's generally pretty clean. Okay, and now what I'm going to do, and you want like a Kleenex or a paper towel handy for this part, because what we're going to do is we're going to tap water on here, just clean drips of water, and then we're going to soak up those droplets. You get the idea, because that will kind of lift some of that color out and produce more distinct droplets. Now, you can also add these like one by one. So for instance, I could literally take my tip and just drop a droplet on there, and that would give me a droplet. Or you can flick them on like I showed you by tapping your finger in your wet brush. Either one will work. You can get darker and lighter dots just by the size or how much water you have on your brush. But definitely dab up the excess ink, and then this will dry with kind of just like raindroppy looks. So look at all of those ways we did that. Now let's take one of these papers. By the way, I just want to show you, this is the salt one that's drying, and oh, it looks awesome. You get different results every time you do this, by the way. But let's take one of these papers. I think I'm going to go for the salt, and let's create a card out of it. Now to make our card, I took this piece, I cut it in half at 3.5 inches. So it's 3.5 inches across. And then it's, 3.5 inches across. And then it's 5 inches long. So I cut it down to 4 3/4 of an inch, which I think it is. Now I'm second guessing myself. Okay, so it's 3.5. It's actually 3.5 by 4 3/4. Okay, I was right. I thought I was right. Now the remaining half, I just cut 3/4 of an inch off, and I'm gonna save this for the inside of my card. And then I have this piece, which I can do whatever I'd like with. Okay, so now this piece, which I think was the cooler of the two background pieces, I want to take and add to my card. So I'm going to adhere it to a panel of Old Olive cardstock. Now, just a reminder, you can see all the different techniques that I showed on my blog. I will post pictures of all of those. And if you are enjoying this project, as I sure hope you are, I would like to invite you to something new that I'm doing. It's called Stamp with Dina. It's every month I have different techniques, different suggestions, different ideas for you that you can enjoy doing watercoloring within your stamping. And it's going to be so much fun. So I hope you'll consider joining me for that. All right, now I'm going to put this on my card base. This is just a half a sheet. I actually have it cut the long way. Oh, look, I picked up a little from my background of my desk. Anyway, I'm going to place this on here like so. Now, before this whole thing started, somewhere I stamped this thistle image from my Thoughtful Wishes stamp set, and I wanted to kind of color this in. So I stamped this in Stays On black ink onto a scrap of my Fluid 100 watercolor paper. I did that ahead of time just so it had a moment to dry, and I'm going to use a little petunia pop, and because I'm just using a little of it, I'm going to take and put it in the lid of my ink pad. I'm making sure my brush is pretty clean because we've used a lot of colors, but you can see even though it's stained, it is definitely clean. And then I'm just going to kind of dab that color onto those thistles, and you can see I'm just nobody's doing anything in the lines or super careful. We're just adding some color. Okay, and then I want to add some olive. So I'm going to pick up some olive from my block, and I like to kind of put sort of a darker layer down on the center spine of my images. And then I can always blend that out. So I've got a little bit of the dark color. You can see I dabbed off some of that excess color. I'm going to kind of dab this into my water and pick up some watery re-inker, and then we're going to kind of follow the lines of our image. I'm using a really light touch for this, so I'm just barely covering all these stems and branchy areas. I'll put a little dab at the base of each of these thistles. And you want to be careful because you don't want the color to all blend in and create mud. You want a pink area and a green area. Then I'm just going to blend out that color on my leaves of my thistles. And again, I'm going outside the lines. This is what I kind of call messy watercoloring because we're not being super careful. And I'm going to cover each of those little teeny leaves just with a little bit of color. Okay. And then if you need to add some more, add it. But again, we're being messy and not super careful. I want darker and lighter areas on here. I'm going to rinse my brushes really good. Then we're going to come back in and add just a little bit more of our petunia pop. Just again, so we can have lighter and darker areas. And if the colors bleed a little bit, that's okay. Don't worry. We're not going, this isn't a real detailed specific image. It's kind of, you know, sketchy. So our coloring can be sketchy as well. All right, I'm going to let this dry and die cut it, and then we'll put our card together. All right, guys, I die cut my watercolored thistles. I want to add them to my card, but I wanted to, when I put this on here, I thought, well, that's kind of boring. So I wanted to add just a little bit more interest and kind of tie everything together. So I'm going to take that large leafy image and I'm going to ink it up with some old olive. Now I want to make sure my old olive is nice and juicy. So I'm going to take and quick re-ink my ink pad. If you've never re-inked an ink pad, I have a few tips for you. First of all, I'm squeezing out plenty of re-inker on my ink pad. You can see it generally sinks right into the ink pad, mainly because I think this was a little dry. And then I'm going to take a spoon. I do have a dedicated set of spoons. You can get them like at Walmart or Target, pretty cheap, like 3 for $1 or so. And then I'll rinse this off and can use it, you know, again. But that kind of works the ink into the pad so that it's not blotchy. I'll ink up my stamp. It looks good. And I'm just going to stamp this right on here. And again, this is just to add a little bit of interest to the background here. And that looks pretty good. I actually wish I would have stamped it up a little higher, but we're gonna like it the way it is. It's all good. All right, I've got that. And then I want to add a sentiment to this. And I love the sentiment, "You make life better." So for that, I will stamp this in a nice, vivid, pretty peacock. In fact, maybe I'll re-ink my pretty peacock real quick, just so you don't have to watch it. I'll do it really quick on just one side, and then I'll re-ink the rest after the video. But we'll work it in. Oh, that looks better. Okay, and then I'm just going to stamp that. Stamping gods be with me. Like that. You make life better. All right. Ooh, that could have been bad. Got a little ink on myself, but nothing terrible. Okay, now I want to take and add a little ribbon to this. So I'm going to take some of this cream woven ribbon. And this is actually on the retiring or last chance list right now. And I think it's discounted. So check that out. Just gonna put some dimensionals on here. Kind of add this, just tilted, that's the word I'm looking for. Tilted off to the side, okay? And then we could get a little funky with this ribbon. I mean, why not? So I'm gonna take a length here. Oh, I've got maybe 12 inches, and I feel like I could just cut down the side. Will this ravel? No. Just going to cut this down the side because I promised you a funky ribbon. So I will deliver to you a funky ribbon. Now this little edge, I don't know, I think this is the edge. I don't know what you call that. I don't speak sewing, so I don't know what that's called. Salvage edge, maybe? I don't know. Who knows? I could be making that up. I've heard that word before. My expertise is definitely limited in this area. Bias? I don't know. Okay, so I can use this skinny little strip that I just cut off, or what I believe, yes, is that I will have some crinkly layers that now that I cut that whole thing off, should fall kind of off, but it comes down to how well I cut, and I'll show you what I mean by that. Oh my gosh, apparently not well. If I didn't get that whole edge bit off, these won't come out. There we go. Here we go. Yeah. Cut the whole edge, Dina. Don't worry so much about the rest. Well, this was going to be super cool, and it was just supposed to come out of the ribbon like magic. And I can see that is not happening today. So if you want to suffer through this with me as I cut the remainder of those edges, the edging off. Oh, seriously. This is just bad. Oh my gosh. I'm going to end up with like one little string out of all this. Insanity. I'm going to leave this in. I want you to know videos don't always go perfectly well. And hopefully you can laugh. It's not even April Fool's. Oh my gosh, seriously. I don't want to say I'm getting mad, but I'm not happy. I feel like it's one thread's, there we sort of go. I feel like it's just one thread here and there. Where's that first piece? Let's try adding this to the mix. So we've got some crinkly bits, we've got some not crinkly bits, and then we've got a mess. I'm sure you guys are at home are like going, yeah, I'm not doing that ever. All right, but for those of you who are brave, I thought it would be cool to have a little texture, a little crinkle, a little not crinkle, something different. Boy, was I wrong. Lordy. Well, anyway. There we go. That was fun. Okay, I'm going to pop up my layers, or my panel, onto my card here. I don't have it. Now, don't worry, I will re-ink the other half of this. Now, I was talking about Paint with Dina before I was so rudely interrupted by my card. I will put the information about Paint with Dina in the description of this video. It is going to be so much fun. If you have done my Watercolor Happy course, you will really love this. If you haven't, you will enjoy this, and I can't wait to share my love of watercoloring with you. Of course, no card is complete without a little bling. And I think I'm trying to choose which bling to use. And I think I'm going to use these pearls. These are the adhesive backed pearl trio, and I believe that is part of this Thoughtful Journey suite. that coordinates with the bundle we used. You can see they come in different colors. Obviously, we're going to use kind of these greeny looking ones. So I'm just going to pick these up with my Take Your Pick tool and sprinkle some of them throughout my card like that. So fun. Now, don't forget, we're going to put something on the inside of our card too. And I kind of got my paper wet, so let's get a new one. Okay, so I've got a 4x5 1/4 inch panel. And I've got that leftover piece, and you can kind of decide, do you want it on this side or on this side? I kind of like this side a little better. So we'll adhere it just like it's designer series paper on the inside. And, ooh, that's fun. We'll trim the excess off and put it inside our card. Ooh, I love this. Now, I will have, again, all of those different techniques that we tried at the beginning of this video posted on my blog. So check out, the link is in the description of this video. I also will have all the information about Paint with Dina in there. It is going to be so much fun. It starts in January. You're going to want to get registered by January 1st to be included in our first month's awesomeness. We're going to have so much fun. Also, if you would like to order any of the supplies that I used today, please shop my online store and use my December code for HTARMWF9. It's also in the link of the description of this video, or that link is in the description of this video. And then don't forget to grab the Thoughtful Wishes online class while you're there. We've made some gorgeous projects featuring the Thoughtful Journey suite and can't wait for you to be inspired by these awesome projects. Thank you guys so much for stamping with me today. I hope you had so much fun. Let me know which one of those backgrounds is your favorite. I can't wait to hear. And I will see you all soon. Bye-bye.